my income was so low. And I think this is my message for you. That is totally okay. Everyone starts somewhere. You might be given a great opportunity by your parents, or you might have been crapped on by your parents. But nonetheless, like, everyone's born with no net worth, right? I mean, you might inherit something, but not yet. So that's my encouragement to you is I learned so much through this phase of life. I learned my foundation. I built that foundation between like 19, 20, 21, before you and I got married, of really learning to manage my finances and being very diligent with those things. Welcome back to The Donkey
and the Bee,
where men are jackasses
and women are biatches,
where we work together to build an extraordinary life.
Tune in to up your game in your marriage, entrepreneurship, and finances. Welcome back to another episode of The Donkey and the Bee with your hosts, Brett and Laura Chotkevys. Chotkevys with the CH, because it's Polish. Well, we are coming at you, talking all things marriage, entrepreneurship, and finances. And we are talking about finances today.
Yeah. Talking about being poor.
We are talking about being poor. Because don't we all start
good.
out poor?
Some of us do.
Yeah. I mean, you come out of the womb poor, right?
I guess you're right. Everyone starts at zero.
Everyone starts at zero.
And that's kind of the point of today's call, right? Like, we got to a place where we're very happy with our financial situation, but we both met in college, got married, actually, while we were going to college, and both were poor as crap. And it doesn't matter where you start. Some people, they get a leg up in life, right? They get handed a bunch of stuff. Most people don't. And I don't think it's really relevant where you start or necessarily when you start, but you got to start. And everyone has the potential and the opportunity, at least in this country, to get to a very healthy financial place, to get to financial freedom and things like that.
When I think about this topic, I always think about the older individuals in a category of like 45 years old to maybe like 70 or so, 65. I think a lot of people in that category say that, you know, I haven't made a plan and it's too late for me. I don't know where I'd start. And I always think, and I think I've referenced this before in past podcasts, I always think of KFC, Colonel Sanders.
Yeah.
Because how old was he when he started?
Like in his 60s.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I always bring that to people when they say, "Oh, it's too late for me. Like I can't even think about, you know, saving money and for quote unquote retirement, even though they're like almost to retirement." Think of Colonel Sanders. Every time that excuse comes to your mind, it's never too late.
Yeah. Well, and to the opposite point, it's never too early. So I want to talk about how we got started, right? We were both from middle-income families. We're not struggling to put food on the table, but we're not handed a silver spoon. And so, I mean, really, I was given a great opportunity. My parents paid for my first year of college and were planning to pay for my college, and I screwed it up, got in trouble, kicked out of school, and some other things. And then so I think at 19 years old, went and moved out with some friends and really just started there, right? I think I had a great opportunity. My parents were trying to take care of me in a certain way and help and set me on the right stage. And that opportunity was there, and I screwed it up. And so really at about 19 or so, I was just fending for myself, so to speak, right? And man, there was this season, I wasn't a waiter yet. I was a host at Marie Callender's. And I don't know what I was making, like $8 an hour.
$7.
Something like that, right? And I was taking home about $850 per month and living my own. And man, I had to stretch my budget so far on this, host budget. I was shopping at the 99-cent store. I would get all my groceries there. You could get bread and milk and eggs and bologna, top ramen and hot dogs. And like, that was me grocery shopping, right? Like I went there and, everything was 99 cents. And, that was a season where, I didn't make much money, the whole time until we got married. Actually, we didn't make much money then. But nonetheless, like I was going through college. I was paying my way through college. and waiting tables and working in the restaurant industry. And then we got married. But this whole time, like, my income was so low. And I think this is my message for you. That is totally okay. Everyone starts somewhere. You might be given a great opportunity by your parents, or you might have been crapped on by your parents. But nonetheless, like, everyone's born with no net worth, right? I mean, you might inherit something, but not yet. So that's my encouragement to you is I learned so much through this phase of life. The budgeting, I would consider it the financial defense. If we kind of compare, like, there's financial defense, which is budgeting and everything that you are saving potentially. And then there's financial offense, making money. And then I would say the third phase is like investing, right? I learned my foundation. I built that foundation between like 19, 20, 21, before you and I got married, of really learning to manage my finances and being very diligent with those things.
As we were talking about this topic before, we're actually here talking to you about it, Brett made a statement and I thought about it. He said, I think it's kind of strange that it was okay to struggle when we were in college. Like, it wasn't looked at as like a bad thing. Like, because I was in the same boat. I was bunking with like 4 other girls in a 2-bedroom condo. Like, and that was fun, actually, when you think about it. When I look back on it, it was fun.
Yeah.
But it was viewed as okay, right? Like, that's okay to do when you're in college and whatever else. But I think what has changed since then, because it's been over 20 years, it's crazy. Social media. I think that is what has kind of turned the corner on this, as far as people don't view it as a plus anymore. They view it as a negative because social media pushes this. Everybody's perfect. Everybody goes on vacations all the time. Everybody has the Lamborghinis and the flashy jobs that they work from home in their pajamas, and money just flows in, free flowing every month. And it creates this aura of a fantasy that is not reality. Whereas when we were in college, we didn't have that. There was no social media that we looked at and that we were, oh, wow, we're bunking with 4 other people. Like, that's terrible. We shouldn't be doing that. No, because that wasn't in our face. So I think social media has a huge play on this. And as far as like manipulating, I think, and kind of thwarting people's mindset on where they should be in life. And so I don't take that lightly. And I think that's really the biggest difference between 20 years ago versus today.
Yeah. You remember my first car? When we got married, I had this car that was a hand-me-down from my grandma, and it was like a
Honda Accord,
maybe 1990.
Honda Civic. Yeah. Uh-huh.
But it would not start if it was hot outside. So in the summertime, by like 1 or 2 o'clock, I had to go move the car into the shade because we were working nights. So I'd have to move it into the shade or in the garage so that like at 4:30 when I go to work, the car would start. Because if I didn't, I would literally the car would not start until like it cooled down at like 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night. And like, we couldn't figure out what was wrong with this thing. But to your point, now it's like, you're not going to get a young person who's starting out, who is poor as crap, who has no income. You're not going to get them to be okay with that kind of car, right? They have all this, ads and everything and all the comparison game pushing. You need to go get a big like $30,000 car and this, $600 a month payment. Like, I didn't have any payment. Like, it was cheap as crap. And that I was totally okay with that. So there is something to be said about the shift culturally, and that people are not content with just starting out. And we were very content with that. We knew we were going places. We were going to make some financial moves and learn some skills and things like that. But we were totally fine, like, being in the muck. And that was so beneficial for us.
Yeah. When you say we were okay with being in the muck, there was one instance where I was not okay with it. So I'm just going to be real here. We bought our first house, and it was in, if any of you know California area, we moved to Orange, California, and Orange is an adorable little town, but there's also some pockets of some not so good areas of Orange. And so we bought this house, our first house, and it was a huge fixture. And granted, we were super young and we were both servers, and we were able to pull this together to purchase our first house. So that's number one, I think definitely needs to be said. But I remember I didn't want anybody to come over because I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed of the location. I was embarrassed of the house. Like, I didn't want parents to come over. And when they first came over, I kept saying, yeah, we're going to redo that. Or we're going to, oh, don't worry, we're going to paint that. Or we're going to redo this, because I was so embarrassed of what it looked like. And I just remember our parents were just happy. Like, they were just happy that we bought a house and that that was our first little starter home. But I remember thinking that that was one thing that I was embarrassed about. But man, now that I look back on it, like, what an accomplishment for us to do that. And so I don't think it's a negative thing to be kind of embarrassed about your situation, because if you are, then that's going to propel you to actually take action to get to that next level that you're trying to pursue.
Unless you are embracing this social media perspective that you're not allowed to have the cheap car and you have to only rent the luxury apartment, right? Like, we didn't do that. And that allowed us to budget and that allowed us to save. As we got married young, we were still in college. We were still making tuition payments and books and all that kind of stuff the first year or so, and then got an apartment together and literally got on the same page, right? Like, I remember you talking to me about your wardrobe, how you wanted to upgrade your wardrobe. I'm like, babe, we don't have money in the budget for this kind of stuff. I'm like, threw you a bone. Like, you get $50 a month, right?
I mean,
like
$50. Like, seriously, what am I going to do with that? I can even buy a pair of shoes with that.
Right? Like, you get 2 shirts from Target. That you blow your socks off there, right? Like, have fun. That's what we could afford,
yes.
right? Because we were actually, at that point, we had bought this fixer-upper and we were putting everything back into this house.
$500 a month is our budget to fix up that house.
And we had to do it all ourselves. We couldn't afford anybody.
Uh-huh.
We couldn't afford to hire any subs.
Yeah.
But we had a plan. Like, it wasn't a big plan. It was kind of naive and baby, but that was what we knew, right? And we were working it together, and it built so much grit and unity between us in our marriage, and it taught us this financial defense. Mm-hmm. So I think that's so important, because you could have not learned it, or we could have not learned the financial defense, gone and made good money, and then you're just like everyone else. You make good money and you blow good money. And then at the end of the month, there's nothing left, right? So this was really foundational, this season of our life, which I think really helped us excel as we started learning about making more money. Because when we started making more money, we had the financial defense there. So now we had money at the end of the month. And then the next thing we learned was investing. How do we take this money at the end of the month and start investing it?
I think the only way to get there was to go through that quote unquote muck process. Because when you think about it, if you were to give a 12-year-old a ton of cash, right? Just give it to them. And then when 13, just give them a ton of cash. When the 14, give them a ton of cash. Like, they're not learning anything. If anything, you're harming them from doing that. And so I think because we went through that process of we had to work hard for it and sit in that muck for however many years we did that for, we built so much grit, and it was essential to the process of our growth that we had to go through that in order to learn those different aspects of ourselves and learn the different aspects of the finances. And so I think that is a huge benefit to us in many areas, because now we know that we have to go through these muck areas and muck seasons of our life in order to get to that next season, because we have to learn these certain things in the season that we're currently in to get to that next.
Absolutely. If I was to go back, I wouldn't change it. I would still do all of that stuff. It set our foundation in our marriage, but also financially. The only thing that I would change is I would learn the financial income side of this faster and sooner. We weren't really focusing on it, right? Like, well, I mean, the economy went into a recession while we were in college, and then we were just waiting tables. There wasn't much going on. But I would have, if I could go back in time, I'd tell myself, okay, you have now learned financial defense. Now I want you to focus all of your attention and have someone teach you financial offense. How do you blow up your income? How do you increase your income? You've already decreased your expenses. You've stabilized your budgeting. You're doing great. Now let's focus on creating that gap, right? That money at the end of the month by increasing that income. And it didn't really happen to us until I think I was about 30, you were 28 when we got the bug and like got our first coach and started educating ourselves. And if I just would have done it 5 or 7 years earlier if I could have.
Yeah. You said the bug and I thought we got sick. I'm like, what happened?
Not that bug.
Okay, I was like, what? What are you talking about?
We got the COVID.
The itch? Like, what we...
No.
Not a slug bug, not a VW. That's what I thought you were saying. I'm like, what? We bought a VW? I remember that.
No, we got the desire, right?
Yes.
So, well, because we had our first kid. And then it was like, crap, now our expenses have
life
gone
to take
up.
care of. Yeah.
Now what do we do, right? We have to move out of this bad neighborhood because we can't send our kids to school here.
Yeah.
So there was some motivation there. And I think that's the other part of it is motivation. Once you are in these circumstances and if you would just embrace the muck, right? And you live there, you do one of two things. You grow your discipline and you become really mature in these things. And or with the other thing is you light a fire under your butt and you're like, hey, you know what? I do not want this circumstance for my children, or I'm not going to raise my kids in this neighborhood, or I'm not going to work in this kind of dead end job for the rest of my life, right? Like you create a fire and you start getting excited about these things. And then you force yourself, how do I solve this problem? How do I look outside of my bubble here? And you figure out the solution. And I think that's what we did. We hated our jobs. And you were crying every day. I despise going to work. And it was like, we got to figure something else out here, right? Yeah. And that's when we learned that game, the income game, right? And then you just couple that with, now I'm making this income. I just need to learn to not spend it. And that was that financial defense. So now I have money that we're saving. And now you learn the third game of investing, which really gets you to that early retirement, that financial freedom by the time you're still in your 30s. And then it's just like, all right, now we're doing something to be proud of.
When you say proud of, I remember, speaking of stories, when people would ask, oh, what do you do? Because, of course, that's the number one question everybody asks when you first meet somebody. And I would always just like cringe in my stomach every time somebody asked that, because I would say I'm a server. Like I wait tables, I'm a server. And I was so embarrassed of that. Like I thought that I needed to be so much further along in my process of whatever it was. I was going through college. Like I didn't have a actual career, right? I was just waiting tables to get through college. But I remember thinking like, gosh, like I just got insecure about it. And I actually had somebody a few days ago, I was at the grocery store and this older gentleman started to strike up a conversation with me, like picking up apples or something. And he started asking me questions about what I did. And I remember being so proud of what I said. I'm an entrepreneur. I invest in real estate, and I also own memory care mansions here in town. He's like, "Oh, wow!" Like I'm just proud of that. I'm proud of what we've done and what we've accomplished. And I only could have been where I'm at now by going through what we did in our early 20s. And so, how we started this call, it's okay to start poor because everybody does, right? Unless you're handed something, inheritance, but most people don't. And so everybody's in the same situation that you're in. Everyone starts at the same start line, but we all finish at different, right? We finish at different finish lines. And so that's okay. Everyone's story is different. Everyone's journey is different. But I think just knowing that and following that journey of you and yourself and you and your spouse, you and your family, and not focusing on all the other people around you, right? It's like almost having those blinders that those horses have on the sides of their eyes, like just focusing on what your goals are and where you're headed and not getting distracted by, the fancy cars and the nice houses and everything else that everyone else has on the side of you.
The only thing I'd add to that is as an encouragement to people who are trying to figure this out, trying to get a plan, is it doesn't matter if you started at 18 or 25, or if you're listening to this now and you're 55 and you're like, well, crap, it's too late for me. It's never too late.
Yeah.
Right? Like we did it. We got to financial freedom in 10 years. Just get together with your spouse, get on the same page, create a plan together, and just take massive action and execute. Find people around you who have already done it and just copy step by step. How did they do it? Right? And it's kind of as simple as that. It's not easy, but it's as simple as that.
If you ask somebody who you think has achieved financial freedom or you think has done really well financially, if you ask them how they've done it or how they've gotten there, I bet you without a doubt they would be more than happy to share it with you. So I think just taking the step out and getting uncomfortable and asking somebody who's ahead of the game than you are, ask them. Ask them how they got there. Why would you not? Why would you not want to ask someone who's ahead of you? That could propel you an extra couple years ahead if you just take a step out of faith and ask somebody. So I think that should be something that, as far as homework, what someone should do is just to ask.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us on another episode of The Donkey and the Bee. And as you all know, we do not run ads on the show, but there is one ask that we have for you, and that is to share. Share this episode with someone who you think maybe just needs to hear the information, or you think maybe should hear the information. Share it with a coworker, family, friend, anyone. Just share the show. We love you guys, and we will see you on the next show.